Welcome to Miles Ahead, the Canadian Points Podcast, brought to you by FrugalFlyer.ca, where we talk about all things miles and points, a hobby that allows us to travel all over the world in style and on a budget. Today, we're talking about minimum spending requirements, or MSR, the best ways that you can meet them, some spending strategies that maybe you haven't thought of before, how we manage and track our minimum spending requirements. And I think a good way to kick off this episode is to share some stories about, our first big minimum spending requirement, like, more than $3,000 a month, and how we handled that. And then you'll see sort of how things have developed for each of us as we get later on in the episode. Josh, what was your first big minimum spending requirement that you had to hit, and what techniques did you deploy to take advantage of that?
Yeah, I'm thinking back, it was probably around 2017 when I got my first American Express Business Platinum card in Canada. And I don't remember what the exact bonus was, but the minimum spend requirement was pretty consistently $10,000 in 3 months for that card around that time. So I was single, living by myself, renting, not a lot of expenses, pretty frugal guy. So there's a service, it's called Plastique, I'm pretty sure it's Plastic. Plastic with a Q. And back in 2017, I'm not even sure if they still do this, but you could pay your rent via it. So kind of an early Chexy, which we'll talk about later. So you could set up your rent payment through this service, and I'm pretty sure they mailed physical checks at this point. This was very rudimentary. It makes me think of when Netflix was physically mailing DVDs before it became a stream platform. So anyways, they would take your payment on a credit card with a small percent fee, and then they'd mail the check to the landlord. So I actually had convinced my landlord to take rent via this way. And it was a phenomenal way to really scale my spending without spending anything more to get that bonus on the Business Platinum. So it worked out really well. A little bit roundabout, a little bit of work, but I honestly ran it for a couple of years over a bunch of cards while I lived at that place. So it was great.
Yeah, really interesting to see how it's developed. Jeff, what about you? What was your first big minimum spend, and how did you hit it?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind for me was actually the U.S. Marriott Bonvoy Brilliant, which at the time had a $6,000 USD minimum spend requirement in 3 months. So we're talking what is that? Close to $9,000.
$9,000. Yeah, probably something.
So that was a lot of money for me at the time. So what I ended up doing for a lot of that is doing some creative return tricks through certain retailers that allow you to purchase an item using a credit card, and then when you return it in store, you can actually have the refund credited back to your debit account.
Classic.
Yeah. That was one of the early MSR tricks back in the day. I don't do this anymore. I find it's a lot of busy work and a lot of running around, and anytime you're including or having to deal with customer service representatives, or you have eyes on what you're doing, I tend to try to avoid those now, and I kind of go for the more frictionless ways of meeting MSR. Stuff I can just do from my computer or from my desk is honestly a lot more appealing now. So, but that was kind of the early days of MSR for me. And I'm sure there were others, but that's kind of the first one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, no, really good trick for sure. My first big minimum spend was also the Canadian Business Platinum. I think it was about $10,000 in 3 months or something like that. This was back in early 2022. And I had timed up some car repairs that I needed to do at that time. And then not related to that minimum spend, but I did actually use Plastique as well, that we're going to get to a little bit later, to put almost $40,000 in charges on 1 month into a credit card. So we'll share a little bit of that a little bit later on in the more specific sections. But the basics of minimum spending requirements are something that we want to define if somebody's brand new, just listening to the show or just getting started in this. Alternatively, if you have a family member you're trying to get convinced to join the credit card world of miles and points, and they're thinking, I can't meet these sort of minimum spending requirements, this is a great episode to share with them. So we're going to define what some of the basics are. Jeff, what are the most common mistake? What do people think that when they get approved for the card, their minimum spending happens or when does the clock start, I guess, is the best question, or the best way to put this.
Yeah, I think this is like a pretty big misconception, and honestly, one of the most common questions that I do see from beginners is, when does the actual minimum spend period start? And it actually starts on approval. A lot of people think it starts when you activate the card, which kind of makes sense, but virtually every single credit card issuer, I don't think there's any exception, starts the clock for minimum spend the moment you are approved. From that approval date, you then have X amount of months, usually 3 months, sometimes 6, sometimes there's a yearly component, but it's always starting on approval date.
Yeah, so really important to get that through everybody right away, that sometimes your card will ship quickly. Like if it's a premium card, you'll get an instant card number occasionally with Amex Canada. But as soon as you're approved, the clock starts. So mark that down, and then we'll get a little bit later some other best practices for how to track and plan. And then in terms of like evaluating a welcome bonus, I'm pretty sure we've done multiple articles, or we've also done episodes on like what is a good welcome bonus and how to evaluate that. We'll link to some of that material in the show notes, but we're not going to spend too much time going over that now because we have a lot of stuff to get to. For tracking and planning your minimum spending requirements, Josh, what are some of the best practices here that we want to implore with people?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, and similar to what Jeff mentioned, where something you kind of hear from people starting out is, I've signed up for a card, and how am I going to meet the spend now? And it's such a misguided kind of cart before the horse mindset. You always want to have a plan. If I'm applying for a card today that has a $5,000 minimum spend, I already know how I'm going to hit that, or at least a very 80% of the way there plan, because I don't want to be caught in a situation where I've now taken the credit hit, got this card, maybe paid an annual fee, and not be able to meet that. So you always want to make sure you have a plan, at least a rough one, as to how you're going to meet that minimum spending requirement before you actually even submit your information and apply for that card.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we'd make sure you want to do is take a screenshot of the offer that you applied for. There's nothing worse than thinking, oh, when I applied for that Amex card, did it have something else that I needed to do, 12 months down the road? And then you've got to go back through. I've gone back through Frugal Flyer newsletters actually before to see what the offer was at that time, trying to find old blog posts from different blogs around the web that publish these constant updating offers. So making sure that you take a screenshot, writing down what your offer was exactly. And that's becoming more important as month 13 offers are kind of the norm in Canada, unfortunately. Like a lot of these companies now are really wanting you to keep the card for 13, 14, 15 months, and 50% of the welcome bonus is tied up in that last portion that you only get after the first year. So if you mess that up, which is what they're counting on, you're out quite a lot of points. All right, so now that we've got the basics out of the way, we're going to move on to some of the easy minimum spending requirement tricks. So, Jeff, I think everybody on the show has used Chexy a lot, but let's define sort of what that is, and then also some of the easiest opportunities to take advantage of Chexy.
Yeah, so Chexy, pretty simply put, is almost like a payment processor. They're going to take a charge from you, from your credit card, and they're going to take a small cut. We'll get to that in a second. Essentially, say for example, rent is the most popular expense that people use Chexy for. So for example, if your rent is $3,000 a month, you can have Chexy charge your card $3,000, and then they're going to forward that $3,000 to your landlord or whoever you pay via e-transfer. And then Chexy is going to add on an additional cut that they take. It's between, I'm going to say 1.75 and 2.5%. So it's not nothing, but if the rewards work out in your favor, it's definitely worth doing. And it's it's an easy way to put a lot of spend on a card in a short period of time. So super useful. Rent is not the only thing that you can use it for. You can also use it for daycare, other household expenses like your hydro bill, I don't know what else. What else is there? I think you can do like property tax. You can also do a CRA tax. So there's a lot of uses for it where you can do, where people who have a large expense coming up, you can run it through Chexy and easily meet minimum spend requirements, albeit at a slight loss if you're factoring the fee.
Yeah. But there's some restrictions around what card you can use, right, Josh, for certain expenses?
Yeah, Chexy's kind of developed over the past few years. So they do officially accept Visa, MasterCard, and American Express cards. But depending on the category of your expense, they may accept only Visa or MasterCard. So lately we're seeing that for household expenses, car and transportation expenses, and wellness. We're seeing rumors that daycare expenses are slowly swapping to no American Express as well. So just something to be aware of. Visa and MasterCard are universally supported. So if you're looking to do a spend on either of those card types, tons of opportunity here. Amex, you might be a little bit more restricted, but there's still some great opportunity there. And like Jeff said, you're going to pay a small fee for it, but if you're working towards a welcome bonus, the small fee you pay is always going to be way outnumbered from the value that you're getting on a card through the bonus. So it's a little bit pay to play, but not in a bad way.
Yeah, and I think it also prevents people from getting into the common trap of spending just for the sake of spending to meet their welcome bonus, like buying stuff you don't really need or buying something that's more expensive than you would normally buy because you're trying to hit this minimum spending requirement. So, paying a 1.75% fee to stay within your normal expenses, I think is totally normal. But with those limited categories, I think it's worth saying that Chexy can change these categories at any point in time, or just stop accepting Amex at any point in time. So if you're banking on Chexy for like 90% of your minimum spend, have a backup plan, or at least be prepared to take the loss so that it doesn't feel that bad if for whatever reason you all of a sudden can't spend with Chexy. But that's not the only way to have some minimum spending requirement tricks. Josh, you've also used Casa, which is a rent payment service that's kind of a competitor to Chexy, but they're a little bit more niche almost.
Yeah, Casa is new, came out in the last half a year, so it's been in development for a while. Very, very similar to Chexy, like Danny said. The difference is they're mainly a rent payment service as of right now, and they only take Visa and MasterCard. They do function pretty much the same as Chexy, like you enter your landlord details, property details, and your card details. And same thing, it takes a payment and e-transfers to your landlord on the specific date. So it can be a good avenue. Knowing that it accepts Visa and MasterCard, maybe you're paying your rent on multiple platforms, who knows? But there's definitely an avenue there.
Very good. Now, in terms of other ways that aren't bill payment services, you could also use gift cards, right? So buying gift cards for grocery stores that you're going to be spending money at, and spending $1,500 in advance to basically front the cash. Now, of course, you'd want to make sure that you pull that from your savings or whatever budgeting software you use to make sure you're not paying interest on your balance. But that can be a great way, buying gift cards. But Amex Canada and Amex US, especially during sign-up bonus periods, are a huge fan of this. That being said, I have bought like Airbnb gift cards through Rove with the intention of just getting more points for buying the gift card, and I didn't have any problems with that with Amex US. So I think really only if you're going hard, I would avoid that. But Jeff, using something like the refundable hotel trick can also be a way to sort of lengthen out your minimum spending time period, which sounds complex. So I'll leave it to you to kind of simplify that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have a article. I don't ever remember who wrote it on the website.
We do have one.
Yeah, was it you, Josh?
It might have been. It's pretty old, yeah.
Yeah, it's old.
So yeah, I won't get into too much detail, but if you want to get the full story on what the refundable hotel trick is, you can check out the article that'll be linked. But essentially what this is you book a very expensive hotel. Say you book a $3,000 hotel stay for a long way into the future, say 9 months into the future, and then that will essentially trigger the welcome bonus ahead of time, and then you can slowly make your spend throughout, and then you would slowly make that $3,000 spend over a longer period of time, essentially stretching out that $3,000 into say 6 months. And then once you've reached that $3,000 threshold, then you can go ahead and cancel that refundable hotel, and it will not claw back your welcome bonus. Now, I don't know if does that work for every issuer, or is there some exclusions there as far as you guys know?
I think it's
For Canada,
I think it's pretty consistent in
widely
Canada.
accepted.
Yeah. Because like in theory, yeah, you're booking a refundable hotel, but like it's still a legitimate charge, right? Like there's no way for them to know that that's what you're going to do. Like you said, as long as you do the spend, the legitimate spend as well before you cancel it. So yeah, no, I've never heard of it not working on any Canadian issuer. So it's a nice trick if you find yourself needing a couple extra months.
Yeah. Yeah, now again, you don't have to front that, so make sure that you have the money to pay your credit card bill so you're not paying interest. But if you run into a situation where your original plan for spending has fallen through and you need some more time, that's a great way to get that done. Now, prepaying other bills. Josh, have you ever prepaid your bills for a set period for any utility or insurance in order to meet a minimum spending requirement?
I haven't done utility, but I know Reed has done that and has had some success with that. Car insurance for sure. You can absolutely do a lump sum annual payment for your car insurance on a credit card, and typically there's no fees. They're happy to get a lump sum all at once, to say the least. So again, you have to have that money up front, but if you can afford it, why not? There's no really downside, and from a budgeting perspective, it might even be easier to have the one-time payment versus the monthlies as well. So I think that's a great method.
Definitely. Now, here's one that I hadn't thought about until I saw it in our show notes, but paying for health expenses in full out of pocket and then having your benefit plan reimburse after the fact is fantastic, right? So if your benefit plan, if you're lucky enough to have one, allows you to do pay yourself and then be reimbursed, it's a fantastic way, with dentist expenses, that sort of thing, to get some really easy minimum spending requirements completed there. And then also just planning your applications, right? So we talked about this a little bit with having a plan, but making sure that, if you're going to be going away and you're going to plan on splashing out a little bit with dining and that sort of stuff, you are probably going to be spending more than you would at home. A fantastic time to apply for a new card and get a little bit of extra spending while you're planning on spending a little bit more anyway. Okay, so speaking of, planning applications around big potential purchases, also when you're buying a car, you can often put a set amount on a credit card, and I've actually negotiated this into some car deals before where I said that, I will only accept a $5,000 payment for the down payment with my credit card, even if their store is a $2,500 maximum sort of a thing. And oftentimes they'll allow you to do it, even if they'll charge you a small fee. So it's always worth asking. Not like people are buying cars all the time, but that's something to think about. And then, as I mentioned in the intro, I actually used Plastique to charge $40,000 onto a credit card. It had to be done in two separate transactions. I had to cycle my limit, which, looking back on it now, I'm not sure if I would have done, knowing that issuers don't really love that. But I basically had the money already allocated from some other stuff, and I paid off the card, paid it again, and was able to get 2 physical checks mailed to the dealership. And I wrote a whole post about this. I can't remember where. We'll have to find it and link to it in the show notes, but I did write about it in an article so you can see the exact math behind it and why I did it and how it made sense. But back when you used to be able to get SQS through spending, and that was a great way to accumulate Aeroplan status. That was how I did it. But Jeff, we've also got a few other tips that are more everyday stuff rather than buying a car, which is, usually a very rare purchase for people.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did do that with our last car too, but the dealership would only take up to $5,000 on a credit card. But I'm pretty sure I used that towards a welcome bonus too. So I mean, even the 5,000 really helped out, I'm pretty sure it finished off the spend on the welcome bonus, whatever it was. But yeah, the other one that I really like is offering to pay for a large group expense and then having the rest of the party in your group reimburse you the funds or their share once you've made the purchase. This works great for like dinners out, or say a group of 4 people want to go to a hockey game. You can say, hey guys, I'll buy the tickets. You can transfer me your share once I have the tickets purchased. So super easy way to do that. You can do this with like almost anything that involves a group. Say you're traveling as a group, you can offer to buy the train tickets or you can offer to buy the tour tickets. Works for any of those types of things. And then the other one is the preset bills. So, for example, I have like my cell phone and my internet always just charged to this same card or whatever card I'm working on a welcome bonus currently. So just keep in mind to change your preset bills to whatever new card you're working on. And it's obviously not going to amount to a ton of spend, but it all adds up and it all helps.
For
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. And then speaking of concert tickets, that actually reminds me of something we should mention for anybody who's a little bit more advanced. Pays is a new payment processor, kind of like PayPal, that Chase and a bunch of the other big US banks are very involved with. And they're offering 10x on any Pays payments right now at checkout. So you have to have an eligible card, which is a lot of the Chase Sapphire products and that sort of thing. But it's a fantastic way to rack up some ultimate rewards. If you are a little bit more advanced in this and you have Chase cards, it's worth looking into Pays and seeing if you're going to go to a concert or something like that, that you can pay for that group expense, because you are going to get a lot of points back with a 10x multiplier. All right, on to the fun stuff. Manufactured spending. This is where we really get into the weeds of coming up with expenses that we don't have and basically spending money on your credit card and getting almost all of it back and essentially creating charges out of thin air. And there's basically a whole community around this. So, Josh, I think that you are definitely the hardest player when it comes to manufactured spending. Why don't you define what manufactured spending is?
I feel like maybe the biggest in this group of three, but very small compared to many, many people out there. So manufactured spending is, or you might hear us refer to as MS, is often the acronym that people use, it's a very interesting thing and maybe more towards that intermediate advanced kind of scaling in this hobby, where exactly what Danny said, you find a way to generate a charge on your credit card. You're not purchasing, you're planning to actually purchasing anything. And then the money goes somewhere and then you figure out a way to get that money back in your account, but the credit card charge remains. So then you pay off the credit card charge with that money. Now there's many different, ways. It is cyclical in nature, but there can be one additional step, 5 additional steps, depending on the thing you're doing. When it comes to manufactured spending, completely honest, it's very hard to find a method that works. There's been many that have come and gone, many that have died, and we'll chat about more of those later. But it's hard to find a method that works, first of all, and it's equally as difficult to find a way to liquidate those charges or funds or whatever. You might find something that will take credit cards that you're like, wow, this is great. I didn't think this service would take credit cards, but you have no way or no idea how to get the money out of it. So it's not really that useful. So you kind of need that generating spend and liquidation method. They're really both equal pieces of the puzzle to make it happen. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. I will also say, if you want to learn more about manufactured spend, you're really never going to see it in depth on a blog, in any articles.
People or a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. People, when they have a working method, hold it very close to their chest. That being said, people do share things in small groups, and oftentimes a lot of those small groups come out of physical meetups. Meeting people in person, chatting in person is the best way to have these conversations. Now, of course, don't just show up to a meetup and in the first 2 minutes say, hey, does anyone know any manufactured spending? At least buy me a drink first. But it's always a topic that comes up at our Frugal Flyer meetups, which is fantastic to see, and many other meetups that I've attended over the years. So, if you're interested in learning more, try to get out to a local event or a Frugal Flyer event or whatever it may be to learn more. If you come to a Frugal Flyer event, we're always happy to share details and more information on everything that we kind of talked about in this call, and you'll probably learn a new thing or two and hopefully come out of it with a few new friends as well. So that's kind of the main underlying thing for manufactured spending is people aren't going to share it with people they don't know online, just flat out. It just doesn't happen.
Correct. Yeah. So going over a few of the current manufactured spending methods, and some of the ones that have been around for a long time, and they've been around for so long now, they're not going to go away, or it would take something pretty drastic for them to go away. And Jeff, I'll let you introduce one of the manufactured spending things that we actually do publish on the blog, which is the PayPower Mastercard. It's not really even a card anymore.
No, yeah, it's basically an app now. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, PayPower is just, I can't believe it's been around this long and it's still lasted. I remember the very first meetup I attended in it was probably like 2016 or 2017. And PayPower was all the rage back then, and it's still going. I mean, this was back when the Cobalt didn't have a monthly category spend cap, so people were going pretty wild with it back then. And I mean, people probably still do to an extent, or to the extent that they can. But yeah, essentially a PayPower is very simple. You reload it at a grocery store most often. You can do it at other places. I think at gas stations too, some gas stations. And it goes into a virtual credit card, essentially. And then you can use that card to either spend on it or liquidate it. Liquidating it is tricky. There are ways to do it, but as Josh mentioned, people aren't really going to disclose how they're exactly liquidating these things, but there are ways that people have figured out. And it's a really good way just to kind of generate a lot of grocery spend, which we all love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the kicker, is you load PayPower and it codes as the retailer. So it doesn't matter that you're loading this completely separate thing if you're loading at a Safeway 5-6 times, depending on the card you're using. And there are some issuers that do have a little bit of concern with this. American Express, similar to what we talked about with gift cards, have kind of cracked down a bit. I do know people who still PayPower Cobalt. Their risk appetite is different than others. That's fine. But a lot of the other issuers are pretty lax with it, which is nice to see. There was also, this probably back 2016, 2017, when you mentioned, Jeff, you used to be able to get unlimited PayPower cards when it was the physical cards. You could slightly adjust your name, slightly adjust your address. And so I knew people, I think I had 6 PayPowers going at once. I knew people that had up to 30. That all came crashing down at one point, and those of us who were doing that now can no longer get PayPower cards. But there were people doing some crazy stuff with up to 30 cards, uncapped, Cobalts. There were people printing hundreds of thousands of Marriott and whatnot a day.
Yeah,
insane.
Pretty crazy. Yes. So basically the mechanics of PayPower, they've got a bill pay feature, and there's a few different things that you can bill pay to. Personally, I bill pay to a TD line of credit, and it works perfectly fine. And then you just move the funds from your line of credit back into a checking account. The only thing I've had issues with is I was working towards Aeroplan status, and I was bill paying directly back to a CIBC credit card. And CIBC called me, and they basically said, hey, where are these funds coming from? How are you paying this much from an external account that we can't see? Yeah. And it didn't help that it was my wife's card as well. So it was double weird. So I stopped doing that. But to TD line of credit, no issues. Anecdotally heard some issues with an RBC line of credit. I don't know if anybody else can speak to that or if anybody else has heard issues. Jeff, you're giving me a funny face.
No, I wasn't. It has nothing to do with RBC, but this kind of goes back to my earlier point of I used to do this and I don't anymore, just because I prefer the frictionless methods where you're not having to deal with customer service agents at the grocery store or having to get on the phone with the bank, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, it still works, but there will often be some hoops to jump through.
For sure.
Danny,
yes, you still have to go to the store.
Yeah, your story about CIBC calling, that we probably should have mentioned this up front, but it's a good thing. This is very gray area stuff, just to be clear. things that work now with manufactured spending can go sideways tomorrow and cause a complete shitstorm. Just something to be aware of. It all obviously all depends on the scaling and volume and velocity and everything that you're doing. But manufacturing spending is very weird patterns outside of the normal with a lot of stuff. So just something to keep in mind. You better have a good story ready if you encounter a situation like that, to say the least.
Yes. Yeah, and when we get onto some of the dead versions of MS, there's a fantastic story that we're going to tell about Revolut and some of the crazy stuff that was going on there. But basically what Josh is saying is, and it's true, a lot of manufactured spending looks like what fraudsters do with like stealing people's credit card numbers and then trying to get the money off those credit cards and convert it to cash, which is exactly what points enthusiasts are trying to do. But most of the time when you tell the bank, I'm just doing this for the points, and you have good records and you can show them that, it's all one closed loop and you're not taking somebody else's money, they're fine with it. But they just have their compliance rules that they need to go through. So risk appetite definitely needs to be a little higher if you want to participate in manufactured spending. And speaking of risk appetite, buying groups shipping thousands of dollars of merchandise to a warehouse you're never going to see, hoping that they'll send money back to you. Jeff, I know that you're going to talk a little bit about Canada Buying Group, but I know I summarized it pretty well, but give the folks a realistic definition of what a buying group is.
Yeah, so buying groups, how they operate is that sometimes an individual purchaser is able to buy something at a discounted price that perhaps a wholesaler or a mass market buyer isn't able to get. This is pretty common with like electronics. So what a buying group will generally do is send out a request for purchasers to buy, say, Apple AirPods, and then to send them to the buying group warehouse. And then that buying group warehouse will reimburse the purchaser however much the deal was for. Sounds crazy, but there's a lot of these. There's a lot of these, and a lot of people do an obscene amount of money every month sending product to these buying group warehouses. And most of them, there has been issues in the past, but there are a handful of very reputable ones that people have had positive experiences with. You mentioned Canada Buying Group. I've used them for quite a few years. I've done like almost $30,000 in spend through that buying group, and I've had zero issues with them. Now, I'm not endorsing them. I'm not saying that your experience is going to be my experience. Things could go horribly wrong for you. But of course, just do your own research. But generally, I think they're one of the safer methods of doing manufacturer spending, just because it looks kind of more like organic spend on a credit card.
Yeah. No, you're legitimately buying something and somebody just happens to be paying you back for it. Think of it kind of like if you wanted to get the latest and greatest Nintendo Switch, and you're going to go for your neighbor across the street and your neighbor next to you, and you're going to buy those products because you're the only one that has time to go there, and then they're just going to reimburse you for those products. Except in this case, you are the one that's buying the Switch is the buying group, and the buying group wants, 10,000 Nintendo Switches. So that's kind of the business model and why it exists. We've also got a huge market for buying groups in the United States. And I know, Josh, you use buyinggroup.com quite a lot, and they're very reputable.
Yeah, I think over the years, I must be getting close to, I think I logged in today and something around like $350,000 USD I've sent over the years. They're pretty good. Deals are pretty good. We have, it's a few times a year that it's quite busy with Prime Days and Black Friday and, around the holidays. I really like them. They're the standout group for me in the States because they've been great if any packages go missing. They're pretty quick to reimburse you for it. I actually had an issue this past week where I had 2 iPads apparently get delivered, but not delivered, so probably stolen. And thankfully, Amazon actually refunded me directly, so no issue there. But in the past, if I haven't had a retailer refund, buyinggroup.com, you have to go through their like submission process, but they have made me whole in the past. So I think they're great, but you know, that little anecdotal story, just to be clear, there is always risk with this stuff. And when you're not physically there, you kind of have to take everyone's word at everything if it's not there or whatever. So it's just a part of the game, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning that Canada Buying Group is located in Toronto, North York to be specific. So if you're local to the Toronto area and you want to get started with this, but you want a little bit more security, they do take drop-offs right to their warehouse. So you can go to, you know, whatever store it is for whatever product they're looking for, physically buy it, and then drive it to their store and drop it off. And as long as it's within the drop-off hours, there's a nice guy there who I've seen multiple times, and he'll take your stuff and you write her a handwritten receipt and say, this is for this account, this is this name, and they'll credit it to your account and get you paid usually within a week or so. So that can be a great way to get started with it. And if you're interested in buying groups, but you need a little bit more support, I do operate a side business that's aside from Frugal Flyer called Buying Group Gurus. And we basically teach people how to use buying groups, how to avoid getting into some sticky situations, best practices, that sort of thing. So we'll include a link to that. If you're curious about manufactured spending and you're interested in buying groups, it's one potential way to get spend, but definitely not the only way. We talked about this in the intro, but a fantastic way that you can still, with some retailers, create some manufactured spend is to find credit cards or credit card payment methods that you can return in person and charge back to a debit card. I actually haven't done this recently. Have either of you guys interacted with any retailers recently that allowed you to do this?
No. Not for quite a few years, but this used to be quite a lucrative yet time-consuming method for me back in the day, early on.
Yeah. So it's something that you can experiment with. If you've got a little bit of extra time on your hands, or you've got, I don't know, somebody in your family that wants to try this, try to look for stuff with PayPal. That used to work back in the day. But you might run into issues. But worst case, realistically, the only thing that happens is you get refunded back to the original card that you charged. So that's one potential way to do it. And then, Josh, you had a good idea here to just look around at different financial technology companies.
Yeah, we'll chat about it here at the tail end of the episode. But fintech services, fintech platforms, there's always so many new ones coming up. And those have often been some of the most lucrative manufactured spending methods we've seen over the years in Canada. So if you're ever seeing an ad for a new fintech service, it's always worth looking into to see if there's anything interesting you can do with credit cards with it. Because normally those plays are really good and you can hit them really hard early on, but eventually they die and or get worse. So that's just... You know, by the time you hear about it, it's probably on the tail end of getting worse. So, keep an eye out. Definitely.
So, Josh, why don't you tell us the great story of Revolut and sort of what this was? And one of our colleagues or members of the community got into some relatively long conversations with the Royal Bank of Canada.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to manufactured spending, it's always really interesting to learn from what worked in the past. We have a few things we'll chat about here, and none of them work anymore, but you can learn a lot how things function. So Revolut, it's still a business, just doesn't operate in Canada anymore. But essentially, it's like a prepaid card, similar to... You'll see a trend as we talk about all this stuff, many prepaid cards for a lot of this stuff. But you would be able to load your Revolut account with a credit card. And majority of financial institutions, it did not code as a cash advance. And then you were able to simply just withdraw your funds to a Canadian bank account. This is like the most simplistic manufactured spending. It's not normally this simple. The fact that this worked like this was mind-blowing. And the more you loaded, then they increased your funding limit as well. So it was almost like rewarding the activity. It was very weird. This went on for quite a long time, actually. They did eventually start cracking down, and they would like temporary lock accounts, and you would message chat. They'd be like, "Oh, you're doing this. Obviously, you know what you're doing." And they say, "Don't do that," and you would say, "Okay," and then you would just do it again. It really didn't matter. They'd already announced they were going to be exiting Canada, so like there was really no downside at that point. Who cares if you lose your Revolut account? We do have an article on this we will share. We do have I have a friend who went really hard with this and did about $600,000 over a handful of months, and got a nice phone call and had to discuss with FinTrack the nature of these transactions and needed all his records and everything. So if you're doing any manufactured spending ever, keep good records, keep good track of things, keep documents. You never know. But also, $600K in a few months is pretty wild compared to, what I was doing and other people were doing. We were hitting it hard, but you quickly realize there's always someone who goes a little bit harder than if you think you're going hard, you're not going that hard at all. So it was a very weird situation that it worked in that way, and that it was literally as simple as load withdraw. Like it was almost mind blowing that it was that frictionless, but it was. So we, a lot of people made a lot of points off of that.
Yeah, you never want to be the biggest fish in the
Never.
pond. You always want to just be right mid-pack with this sort of
Get
stuff.
enough value
and
from
Josh,
it, Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned FinTrack, Josh. For all those who are not familiar, and I'm not sure there will be because they're a very niche organization, but fill the ladies and gentlemen in on what FinTrack is and why that's
it's essentially
even a little bit more scary.
Essentially like anti-money laundering and fraud and stuff like that. So it's a government body that handles that sort of thing. And obviously you can see with transactions like this where you're loading, withdrawing, it looks weird. And at the volume and velocity that people were doing it, not surprised that flagged something. So, the outcome was wasn't anything bad, but he spent hours on the phone and going over every single transaction. So it was, if he didn't have good records, didn't have statements, didn't have documents, it would have been way worse. So yeah, not great.
Definitely. Now, Jeff, we also have the AC conversion card, which didn't last that long. It's before my time. Actually, all this stuff was just before my time, but please fill everybody in on what that was all about.
Yeah, so it was called the Air Canada Conversion Card, and it was in partnership with CIBC. And the idea behind this card was that you could load it with funds, and that you could hold. Geez, it's been so long. I'm going to say 6 to 8 different currencies on it. And the idea was that you take this card with you when you travel, and say you go to Europe and you're spending in euros, it would convert. It would have all your funds in euros, so you would never have to worry about constantly having to deal with exchange rates and whatnot. Honestly, this card never really ever made sense. But people, of course, didn't use it for its intended purpose. What people ended up doing was you could load it with a credit card, and then you could just take the card to a CIBC ATM and immediately withdraw the funds. And I believe there was a $2,000 daily limit, so you could do this every single day. $2,000 onto your credit card, $2,000 out of the ATM, and you could easily, there's obviously not going to be a multiplier on it, but you could easily print 14,000 points a week.
And then people signed up
for no fee, right?
Family and friends, right?
You could get,
because it was just a prepaid.
Yeah.
There was no real downside. So I definitely remember reading about afterwards people going withdrawing and depositing like 20K a day.
Yeah.
Insane.
Which is crazy, having to deal with that much cash. I don't know.
Physical cash? No, fuck that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. This card didn't last very long, just because I assume they were just hemorrhaging money due to the interchange fees on all the credit cards. So this one crashed and burned really quick, but a lot of people made out like a bandit with them.
Definitely. And then the last one that we're going to talk about today is Mogo. And Josh, please inform everybody what Mogo was all about.
Yeah, you'll see a trend here. The three examples we're talking about are all prepaid cards. So that's normally a good in if you're looking for methods, to say the least. So Mogo, also a prepaid card. You could load this prepaid card with a credit card from several financial institutions that did not code as a cash advance. Some did. It was very narrow, but there was still a lot of utility there. This one was not as straightforward because you couldn't just withdraw the credit card funds back to your account. What you could do is, at this point in time, crypto.com had a promo code with, if you entered it and created a new account and then you bought crypto, you weren't charged fees on like the first like 10 or 20,000. I don't even remember. So essentially you would create a crypto.com account or a new account if you ran out of your previous promo, and then you would buy crypto on crypto.com with your Mogo prepaid card. You just buy something that's pegged at like 1-to-1. Like I think we used a currency that was like TCAD or something back in the day, so you're not dealing with weird exchanges or fluctuations. And then after you bought that, you just flipped the crypto back to Canadian dollars and transferred it to a Canadian bank account. And so Mogo also paid cash back on every purchase you made on the card too. I think it was like 1 or 1.5%. They also said they were planting trees at some point, but
yes,
that was a big joke back in the day too. Like, we're planting trees out here, spending thousands of dollars a day on this card. So Churners did some good. I'm sure the trees were surely planted somewhere, not just some random initiative. But many more steps to that one, a bit more involved, kind of a very weird loop, but really lucrative between getting the credit card spend, getting the cash back on the Mogo spend, all for what was very little in fees, because then you also had a promo code for crypto.com that negated the crypto buying fees. So putting that all together, you might be wondering, how did anyone come up with that? And that's where it comes from, the same thing. People talk, people discuss, one person sees that crypto.com promo and says, hey, this is very interesting. Can we do something with this? And then someone learns about Mogo. So it worked really well for as long as it ran, and then it just kind of fizzled out, as these things tend to do.
It went belly up, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so
you could also withdraw from ATM with Mogo, I remember too.
You could, right? It was like a cap, but so
it was
like
$2,000, yeah.
That's not bad. Yeah, exactly. So there was, I feel like, thinking back now that you mentioned it, we were doing the crypto.com because of the cashback too, because it made like a decent amount of money if you ran it through with the promo code. But so yeah, prepaid cards, pretty hot with manufactured spending. Hopefully, those three examples, and we'll link to articles on Revolut and Mogo. We don't have one on the Air Canada conversion card. So you can give a kind of read through of a firsthand story of those who experienced it. But that's kind of the thing that you want to look for when you're looking for new plays and whatnot. It's pretty consistently some sort of fintech product.
I think these new fintechs have kind of wisened up a little bit, because we haven't seen a really good one in quite a few years now. So who knows what happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, no, the couch MS, as we occasionally refer to it, is harder and harder to come by. But for what it's worth, buying groups have been tried and true, and they sort of stay relevant. So getting good at buying groups and understanding that is a fantastic way to have a consistent stream of manufactured spending. Okay, that about does it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Miles Ahead. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have any questions about anything we discussed, please leave a comment wherever you're listening or on the episode page at FrugalFlyer.ca. And if you have a question you want us to answer on air, you can submit it at FrugalFlyer.ca/podcast. Bye, everybody.